Say, man, who's that cat coming down the street?
I don't know, but it sounds to me like that whipping man with the bone.
Sure having himself a ball.
Well, that's you and I are going to sit. I didn't want us to come into Jim's team, so, you know, there's various times. Hi, Katie. Hi, there. Hi. You are from Minneapolis? Yes, she is. She's oh, yeah. Only with my sisters. Yes. Hi, you guys. Oh, my gosh. Hi, Daddy. Yeah, thank you. Hi, Chick. Oh, thank you for coming. Yeah. But Edith invited you. In fact, you know, you're a little presumptuous. Like, what is the ball? I never do.
No problem at all.
Welcome. We didn't think we needed a microphone. What a great turnout. Thank you. We'll try to speak up so everybody can hear. And thank you for what a wonderful turnout. And I'm glad we didn't try to do it inside. We would run out of room. What a beautiful evening. And welcome to the 23rd dedication of the Wall of Witnesses. We're so happy you made it, and obviously here tonight to to honor our good friend Jim Walstrom. Thanks for coming. My name is Bill. My name is Bill Clark. I'm with Hometown Heritage, and we are partnering together and have for the last 3 or 4 times at this. We have partnered together with the Historic Preservation Commission, and I'll be introducing their president here in a minute and their board. But before I do that, I want to recognize some of our local officials. One of the things that's really fantastic about this is we get such a good turnout of people who are instrumental in making all of this happen. And so I want to recognize, and you'll hear from him a little earlier, our mayor, Jay Pattee. Where are you at, Jay? We have all 5 council people here with us tonight. Chuck Schatz back here. Dr. Randy McCauley. I saw John Andorf right there. John, raise your hand. We've got Barb Walling. I saw Barb come in. And Dean Berkland. Where's Dean? I saw him earlier today. There he is. Thank you all for coming. I also, in a minute, Jeanette Petticourt is going to recognize her board, but it would be appropriate if I recognized mine as well. And then we'll tell you a little history about this, and then we'll get on with the program. Our board is made up of many of the local officials, including Mayor Pattee is on our board, the superintendent of schools, the George Eldridge right here is on our board, Rich Jones. Who else? Raise your hand. Randy McCauley is on our board. Mary Murphy here from the library is on our board. And all these people work very hard on our behalf to make all of this happen. So thank you very, very much. I would be remiss if I didn't introduce our newest staff member, Alyssa Whitmore. Alyssa came to us this last summer. She does part-time at the Iowa Historical Society, and we get to have her 3 days a week. We'd like to have her more, but she's a Perry girl, went to school here in Perry, went off, got a great education, and now is keeping all this put together on all of our behalf, and you're going to hear more from her in a little bit, but grateful for Alyssa. It was a few years back when we were actually dedicating the construction around Sumas Court and the wonderful reconfiguration arches and the art that you see in the floor. And I happened to be with Howard and Roberta out in a place called Murphy's, California. And in Murphy's, California, there is a drugstore there, and on the wall of this drugstore were all these great plaques and reliefs, not unlike what you see here. There's no original ideas, right? So we saw it, and this wall was called the Wall of Comparative Ovations. And so we thought, what a great idea for us back in Perry to take, you know, some of what has gone on through the years and some of the people who have done things for Perry and oversaw Perry. And so in the process we looked for, well, what are we going to call it? Well, you know, Hebrews 12:1 jumped up in our mind because it talks about there being so great a cloud of witnesses. And so we thought, wow, wall of witnesses, because we want to honor, you know, not the really important people that the world calls important necessarily, but we want to honor the people who really love their community and stand as overseers and stand as witnesses that the rest of us are going to do a good job in taking care of their community that they loved. You know, in 23 of these, we've only had one other one where the recipient was still with us. I hope that's not a bad sign. And that was Hazel Purviance and she was here, and we had the privilege of doing this right here, and the family was here. And she was a very worthy recipient, as ours is today. And I know you will agree with me about that. But that's how it happened, and we could not be happier with our collaboration with the Historic Preservation Commission. Great group of people who love Perry and are doing great things, and they're the ones that have worked very hard to make sure we get the right recipients. And you're going to hear more about that in a few minutes. But first, I want to introduce to you their president, Jeanette Petticord, who's going to tell you a little bit about the work that they're doing.
Hi everyone, and I'm glad that so many of you could come this evening. I'm Jeanette Petticord. I'm the chairman of Perry Historic Preservation Commission. We are a 7-person commission that is set up by the Ordinance Code of the City of Perry, Iowa, and appointed by the mayor. We serve for 3-year alternating terms unless someone wants to be reelected, and I've been reelected since 1998. So now that you know why I'm part of historic preservation, I'm historic. I would like to introduce you to our current commission, John Palmer, Jerry Martin, Judy Marcus, Rhonda Onken. Anybody I'm missing? Oh, Joe McCarty. And we are in the process of doing many projects for the city. But I got to tell you a cute story about Jim. He was one of our volunteers for a cemetery walk. And he was portraying Mr. Bruce, who was a businessman from here in the city of Perry. And we had this, we called it a people mover, but it was a wagon, and took the people around all the grave sites and everything. We got around to where Jim was enacting Mr. Bruce. Everybody was so impressed with the enactment, they got off the people mover and gave him a standing ovation. And you very seldom see that those things happen in the cemetery. We started with the cemetery walk in our collaboration with Hometown Perry, Bill Clark. When they decided not to do it, they gave us the information they had on hand, and we took over from there. We have done a plaque over in Perkins Park to honor a former mayor. We do flowers in the planters in the cemetery. We do the veterans flags in the cemetery. And right now we're working on medallions at Violet Hill Cemetery. We are also doing special recognition for the Chinese that are buried in a mass grave at Violet Hill, and for Babyland. And so these are all ongoing projects for us. And it has been great working with Hometown Heritage. And Jim has bailed us out many times for his help. And now I'm going to let you know the complicated process of how we choose who goes on the wall. And I'm going to introduce John Palmer.
I'm not a city official. Congratulations, Jim. Well deserving. You met all the criteria. Okay, when Bill come out to us and asked us if we'd like to go into him with him, and said, yeah, it's a great idea. So had Jim come, excuse me, Bill, and explained to our group, and we wanted to go. So what we do is kind of the first half of it. We put nomination sheets out, rec center, wherever, and then people send them in, mail them in, and they have to be in. I'm going to use this year as an example. April 8th. Okay. April 8th, we had our meeting, and we still have the nominations from the years past that didn't make it. They're still in the running, and we put the new ones in there. We take them home between April and May meeting. We read through them. Okay, when there's 7 of us, voting members. Okay, that May meeting, each of us have to come back with 3 people, and that's tough. That is tough to call, because I happened to be on the committee, the last one that Alberta did, and that was maybe she was on that one that time. And that's tough. We had to pick more, but that's tough to do. I don't know what the other 3, they don't know what it's completely secret. We come in, we have an envelope, same envelopes, and they go to one of our people that help us, but they're not actually a voting member. He tabulates them, comes right back out with the top 3 that made it. Okay, they come back to us again. Now here's where there's a little twist on it. Each of us, I'm going to use myself as an example, I've got 3 votes. I can give one person 3 votes, I can give one person 2 votes, one to another, all 1. And that will take care of a hung jury. So then, Jim's our man. No, I'm very proud of you, Jim. Congratulations.
John serves on both boards, and so we're grateful for the fact that he's able to go back and forth and keep us all at peace, you know. So
yeah, good luck.
I want to introduce to you the artist that's responsible for not only the one you're going to see tonight when we unveil it in a little bit, but many of those that you see on the wall, a good share of them, he has been responsible for. Rick Stewart is a long-standing friend of ours at Hometown Heritage, of me personally. In fact, he mentored my son, who is a sculptor as well. But Rick, just so you know some of the things Rick's done, he's one of the finest sculptors in the Midwest. He has 13 pieces at the Iowa Hall of Fame, including, if you wondered who did Sean Johnson, Clyde Duncan, this guy right here is the guy that did it. So we feel like we've gotten the best of the best, but it's not just about who's a good sculptor. He's not only that, he's a great person. And so we count it a privilege to be able to work with him. And he's going to tell you about the process that he went through and the new friendship that came from him with his newfound model. You know, we haven't given him many opportunities to work with a live model. With that, I want to introduce and Rick is from Newton, Iowa, Rick Stewart.
Thank you, guys. Thank you so much for coming here tonight. It was, when Bill told me I actually had a live person to work from this time, I was just so happy. Finally, all right. It's hard working from just a photograph to get a notion of what somebody really looks like. There's nothing there. And you can stare at that photograph forever and try to make a conversation with it, but it really doesn't work very well. It's pretty one-sided. It wasn't the case with Jim. The first time I met him, I stopped in. I was going to do a few sketches of him, see, you know, just preliminary to kind of get to know, do a little facial structure stuff. So we met. We went over to the Carnegie Library, and we found our way down into the dungeon, into this little room, and we sat there. And the lighting was a little rough, but we managed to get through for a while. Did we end up at your place then? Yes. Shortly after that, didn't we? Yeah. I believe I ended up with a very nice lunch that day too, provided by Julie. And one of the first things he said to me was, I don't really understand why they chose me. I thought about that, and I thought, well, you know, I said, I've got a list of the things that they sent me, why you were chosen, you know. And started talking a bit, and then it was time to start doing some modeling, and so we set up several appointments. So I was there, what, half a dozen times, came to the house, and Jim was very nice. He sat there very patiently. The first time, we made the mistake of having the lunch first, and then having him pose for this. Well, he fell asleep on me. He was so comfortable just sitting there. The next thing I know, I'm just, the lids are getting heavier, and dropping down. The chin is no longer up where it's supposed to be. Excuse me, Jim. So over this amount of time, I've developed a really, really close friendship with this man, and I could tell you exactly why you were honored with this. You are, without question, one of the nicest, greatest neighbor friends you could ever have. You have treated me like one of your own kids, practically. We'll use that little sparingly. I'm 60 now, so I'm 60. I keep forgetting that, but he's only slightly older than I am, but still a kid at heart. The process is long in doing this kind of thing, and it's much more rewarding when you actually have someone to sit and visit with while you're doing this, even if they nod off once in a while. But he was so forthcoming, and it makes the process, I don't know how to explain it. You get something more out of it than when you're sculpting somebody and you're listening to stories they're telling you about family, about interests, things that they love. Learned a lot about vehicles that he enjoys, and bike riding, and a passion with people. That was the big thing. It was relationships. I found that comes through so clearly, how much he really, really cares about everybody he meets. They're all family for him. So congratulations, Jimbo. You deserve this very much. It's been my privilege and honor to be the one to get a sculpture. And I hope, we can, I've got several more of these that I want to cast of you. I want to try some different techniques on them, so, thought maybe you'd want to sit for a while longer, next 6-8 months, something like that, maybe. Anyway, once the sculpting is done, you do the modeling and stuff, get that all done in clay. When that's finished, then you go ahead, make a mold of that, and it's cast. Then it's time to make the frame, and the frame was going to be somewhat more exotic than it ended up being. Started out with ideas I was going to use bicycle parts and all kinds of neat stuff, sort of incorporate things from here, and no, it came actually getting through there, and it looked awful like that. I said, no, this distracts from who the person really is. We don't need all this extraneous stuff. Let's just put the man here in the middle, and that's the important stuff. So, Bill?
Stay up here, Rick. Somebody tell Rick we're not going to pay him to go to Jim's house anymore.
That's all right. There's lunch there, I know. All you got to do is show up, and food happens.
I'm going to ask, now I haven't scripted this, you stay here so you can talk about this, but I'm going to ask Julie and Matt if they'll come up and help us with the unveiling. So.
We're going to unveil it now?
Yeah. You're going to have to be really, there's a... Thank you so much. There's a
Rick, if you would talk about what's in it here. So.
You're going to have to remove a stick.
Oh, yeah, I see it.
On the count of 3.
Ready?
1, 2, 3.
Move your sticks, and there we go.
Very good. Really nice.
Thank you. You bet, guys.
Rick, do you want to say anything about what's in this?
In terms of materials, what?
No, I mean as far as...
information. Yes.
Somebody in the back probably can't read
right.
it yet. So.
Burr Wright, co-founder. And there was a long list of things. The frame was not large enough to incorporate all of it. I called Bill up and said, Bill, I've got all this stuff, I've cut it all out. There's no way it's going to fit on this frame. I'm going to have a frame 3 times this size. Where you go, well, we're going to have to cut. I said, yeah, we are. Can I help pick out the really important stuff? And I said, passionate friend to all. That's the one. That's the one I like the best. And of course, Jim Walstrom, Chamber Director, you had plug for your work for the city, all the things you've done. It's one small part of it, I know. But this is what makes you who you are, buddy.
I hope everyone will come up and take a closer look. Do be careful of the little trench in front of it, but, so we don't want any broken ankles. But do come up and take a look, take pictures, whatever. Very, very well done. It's and I hope the family's happy with this. So this is great. So we now would like our mayor to come and who was a good friend of the Walstroms, and we thought it appropriate for him to make remarks before we go on to our next deal. Okay? Mayor Patti.
You know, and I look around this room, and there's probably not a face in here that couldn't stand up here and say a lot about Jim Walstrom. It's a long story, really, but I was asked to keep my comments short. One thing I was going to say for sure, Jim Walstrom is just an outstanding piece of work. Now, to keep my remarks short, I thought about stopping there. But the fact is that wouldn't make for a good story. And if there isn't something that Jim is known for, it's a good story. Jim wasn't born in Perry, Iowa. He was born in a little town called Manson, Iowa. And I think the citizens of that town became characters in many a story. Not only the human beings, but some of the animals. And if you look back, that could be a story about, a billiard room brawl. Could be a story about a raucous bunch of old guys on a broken down old bus going from Manson, Iowa to a Twins game up in Minnesota. Or it could be the story about a junkyard dog. And junk, by the way, has a family connection for Jim. And I think it's one that's followed Jim his whole life. He's always had an interest in junk since he was a young man. And that came out in a lot of his stories as well. But even though, when you listen to these stories about organizing dances for his fellow townspeople, young people, I think that kept Jim in money because he would always he would charge admission to the dances, and I think he lived very well during his high school years between the dances and the junk. As he went on, he left Manson, and you would think with all the other stories that he tells that there wasn't time for much else, but he did graduate from high school, and he managed to play some sports while he was there. And I think that might have been what took him over to Fort Dodge his freshman year to play football. I could be wrong about that, Jim.
Right.
That year was a very special year for a lot of reasons. Jim played football, but he also met Julie Mills, who would become his lifelong love, 47 years and counting. After that freshman year, they went to Iowa State together. They both transferred over, and Jim was a track star at Iowa State. He was an athlete. He was a good athlete and a college athlete. In a couple years, if we can refer back to junk again, if we fast forward, Jim at one point in time decided that he was going to have a kind of a salvage business of his own. He was going to recycle old refrigerators. And actually he got certified by the state to do this. And I got to go on a run with him one time. And I got to tell you, this was probably less than 10 years ago. And this guy by himself, I said, Jim, let me help you with that side-by-side refrigerator freezer and get it on the... Nope, I got this. And my gosh, that thing just hopped up on the trailer. After Iowa State, Jim and Julie moved to Perry, kind of right out of school, and that was 1970, I believe. That was a really eventful year too, because we came to Perry, Iowa, and Jim went to school, or went to work as the rec director, and Julie went to school as a teacher this time, on the invite of Perry Schools. And I think that's when they sat down with a gentleman who happens to be on the wall behind me already, John Turner. And I think his words were, Perry is a great place, there's a lot of good people here, you should think about hanging your hat here. And they did. They did from 1970 to 1975, I think it was, or right in there. And then for 2 years they went off to South Dakota, in the town that hosts the Corn Palace. And for those 2 years, Jim catered to the people of the good Corn Palace town. And then a phone call came. And it was somebody from Perry, Iowa, asking Jim to come back to be the director of the Chamber of Commerce. Shortly after he got that phone call, Julie got a phone call from the school saying, how would you like your teaching job back? And to take it one step further, and I know that the Walstroms, both Jim and Julie, are really appreciative of the friends in Perry, Iowa, because they came back and actually ended up getting their place back in the old card group that they had played in. They got a great welcome back to Perry, and Jim went to work for the Chamber of Commerce. Now, Jim wasn't only good at stories, but he was good with people. And we all know that, the way that he got people to do things. The other thing is that he would come up with these crazy ideas, and maybe they weren't all his ideas alone. I know that he and Denny Hurley sat down and talked about a bicycle ride in February. So we're talking in the late 70s, and last year I went on that ride that still exists today, the bicycle ride to Rippey. And really, sometimes I wonder, Jim, if you had that much foresight to know that bicycling would be such a niche in Perry today after all these years. But it is, and that's something that you had the foresight and the outright craziness to see way back then. And then there was Town and Country Days and all kinds of events that went on in the Chamber of Commerce. And through all of that, Jim persevered, and if you think about it, it was not an easy time to persevere, because what was happening during that time is major retailers like JCPenney, Spurgeon's, two of the hardware stores, were pulling out of downtown and leaving Perry. And at this time, Jim is trying to keep retailers happy. So the whole complexion of the town was changing. And it wasn't much longer after that that Jim decided to take his skills with people and put it to work for Stein Seed, where he still works to this day. And all I've got to say is Stein Seed was lucky to get you, Jim. Jim didn't quit being involved, though. I remember one time watching the television channel, and there was Jim and his good friend John Glass, and they were in a building downtown, and in fact I think it may have been the hotel. When it was being redone, Jim is in there talking about what's about to happen, what's going to happen, the history of the hotel. And you know, I was flipping channels, and I just stopped right there on our own home channel and watched that for a while because it was really interesting. Jim never stopped working for Perry, no matter what he did. If he was the chamber director, if he was the rec director, we can name all those events that he did. We can name all of the things he accomplished during that time, and even after he was done being the chamber director. But I don't think that's the most remarkable thing about Jim Walstrom. I think the most remarkable thing is the way that he interacts with people. This is what happens as you age. You know, I used to be able to make it through something like this without any problem at all, and anymore, whoo, it's tough. But I got to tell you, this is a good friend, and he's good with people. He promised me not to mention names, but if I was to give you a list of names and you were to look at it, you might ask yourself, what is it that all these people have in common? Because most of them don't go to the same church. They don't live in the same neighborhood. They may not even be the same race. But you know what they all have in common? When they were sick and unable to mow their lawn, somebody showed up. When they needed somebody to talk to, somebody showed up. So what do all those people have in common? Jim Walstrom. So forgive me if but that touches my very heartstrings. The other thing that I wanted to say tonight is, it's up against the wall pretty soon here, Jim. I want to borrow the words of an outstanding man. In a different time, in a different place, these words were said. This is all about Jim Walstrom and his beloved Perry, Iowa. Now, those are more or less what that man said about somebody else. But what tonight is really about is Perry and their beloved Jim Walstrom.
Well done, Mayor Patty.
Yes.
I can't remember him without words like that before. Very well done. Thank you so much. This is so unusual that we are putting a plaque up here with somebody who can still talk to us. It would be remiss if we did not ask our recipient to say a few words. And so I want to introduce all of our really good friends. We love you, my friends. We honor you here tonight. And would you come and just address this group briefly?
Holy cow. I have probably not had a whole lot of sleep since Jeanette called me and told me I was the recipient. And I felt I should say something, and I will. But first, to the organizations who presented this to me. And I had a high school friend, and he said, we have an obligation to encourage each other in positive things. And these organizations, I feel, encourage us to be the most that we can be. And I salute you people for that. It's really great. I've also learned from a man I worked for that less is more in words. So I'm going to try to be less. But in I was 57 years old, and my brother and I and the Ross brothers were at the Ford Garage in Manson, Iowa, and we decided that we should do something for our high school football coach, who was good not just for the football players, but for every student he had. And he was getting older. We hadn't seen him in a while. And so we got a bunch of people together, 28 of us. We went to Storm Lake, Iowa, where he lived, and we went to not to talk about the big football game, but we went to say thank you for what you did for us in our student body. Not just the football players, but everybody in the school. And then we had such a good time and we said thank you to him. We made a point of that. And then we got to talking that our faculty that served us in that little tiny high school, most of them were alive and they were still in Manson. And that included my mother, who taught in home economics in Manson, Iowa for years and years and years. And so we gathered more people and we went back to say thank you to the faculty who treated us all so fairly and squarely. And today I want to say thank you to you wonderful people. And I can go through here, this crowd, and I can say, I think I know you all, and I think I've got something positive to say about you all. This could as easily be any of you as Jim. You are great people, and I am honored to know you and to think that I have learned from you. It's just, this Perry thing has been a terrific run, and I want to say thank you to you people for the community that we moved into, for the community that we have now. And as Dr. Joe Kavanaugh used to say about extra special people and extra special thing, you people are extra special.
Jim, would you introduce your family that's with you tonight? So,
oh yeah.
Yep.
My mother, Eleanor Walstrom, a resident of Perry, Iowa. And from Chicago, Illinois, comes my sister-in-law, Julie's sister, Jane Johnson. She's a gifted artist, a wonderful mother and grandmother, and she's married to a terrific man. And here's the baby of the family, who was about a year old when I met Julie, and this is Katie Averill, and she is extra special also. And here is my girlfriend from 19... Boy, she was a good girl then, and she's a good girl now. And here's my son Matthew. You know, fathers are supposed to teach their sons stuff. But I've learned so much about you, Matthew, and I love this. To get some guy in the football field and knock his brains out. And I'm going to tell you what, this guy's about 38 times tougher than I ever dreamed of being. Hey, we've got other family, my Bradford boys. This is Uncle Bill's son, Bradford. Uncle Bill. So, Uncle Bill was one of my mentee mentors and a wonderful man. He was an Iowa Stater, and he had this crazy idea when I was in high school, had a solid D- average. He had this idea that he made it through Iowa State and he thought I could too. There were two people who thought I could. One was my mother and one was Uncle Bill. And I am grateful to you for encouraging me in that Iowa State experience. I'm grateful to Brad's dad and me mom. And hopefully I'm done.
The Historic Preservation Commission has provided refreshments tonight. They're back on a table over there. We hope that you will avail yourself of their kindnesses towards us and the good things that are over there. Drink, and I know there's some cake and other things, so please help yourself to that. I want to thank all the people who came, particularly those who came long distance. Thank you so much for supporting this event and for all you've done. And we appreciate it very, very much. We've got some other upcoming events. There's sheets back here that Alyssa has that will tell you about other events that are coming up. Please grab one of those if you haven't already. thank you very much for coming tonight. We really, really appreciate it. So come and look at this. Come up and get a closer look too.
Stiff. 4 months. 5 months for me. Yeah, I still I went there to look at a cyclone in the nursing home for my sister. She was at Woodlands.
Say, man, who's that cat coming down the street?
I don't know, but it sounds to me like that Griffin man with the bone.
Sure having himself a ball.
Yes, that was that cat, all right.
Say, man, who's that cat coming down the street?
I don't know, but it sounds to me like that Griffin man with the bone.
Sure having himself a ball.
Yes, that was that cat, all right.